Seika was an overpowered exorcist who was betrayed and killed by his comrades. However, when he reincarnates in another world as the child of a noble family, he trains and becomes the strongest mage once again, but accidentally ends up rizzing all the baddies he came across in his new life. It all began in his first life, where he used his powers as an exorcist to save people and control powerful monsters. This god-tier powers earned him haters who plotted against him and sent his favorite student to unalive him. With his dying breath, he performed a reincarnation ritual, vowing to be more cunning in his next life so he wouldn't face the same fate. Shortly after, he was reborn with his memories into a world of magic as Seika, the third son of a noble family of mages. However, it was discovered that he possessed no magical abilities, and while this should have made him sad, Seika didn't mind because his new body possessed an incredible spiritual energy. As he grew, he continued practicing his art and created shikigamis to help him gather information about his new world. The only downside to his new life was that Gray, the second son of the family, hated him and often bullied him whenever he could, but Seika always fought back. The servants also avoided him like he had a plague and whispered behind his back because he was the son of a mistress, but that only gave him enough time to do his own thing without interference. One day, a slave named Yifa knocked on his door to return his half-cloak, which she'd found in the bushes, but Seika knew it was the spiteful Gray who had tossed it there. Speaking of Gray, he showed up a few moments later and began bragging to Seika about how he was going to attend a magic academy. He said there was no way a useless defect like Seika would ever be accepted into such a prestigious school, and told him that the best place for him would be in the army. Just then, their father, Blaze and Luft, the oldest son, arrived, and Blaze instructed Gray to follow him because they had a magic lesson scheduled. As the trio began walking away, Seika called out to Blaze, asking if he could join them for the lesson, and he agreed. Once they were at the training ground, Luft and Gray showed off their magical prowess, using wind and fire magic respectively. When Gray finished, he handed his wand to Seika and mockingly told him to give it a shot. Seika accepted the wand, and after secretly combining earth and fire ki to make a fireball, he shot it at the target, shocking his family. Gray demanded to know what trick Seika had pulled, but Blaze spoke up and said there were stories of people who were born without magic being able to use it, effectively shutting Gray up. Seika then asked Blaze if he would allow him to study magic like his brothers, and Blaze said no. However, he agreed to give him a tutor to help with his normal studies. As time went on, Seika learned from his tutor and used his shikigami to spy on his brothers whenever they had magic lessons. He also spent his free time in the library practicing his spells when he thought no one was around, but Blaze always saw him and said nothing. One night, he decided to see if he could still summon the Aikashi he'd defeated and sealed away in his past life. But to be on the safe side, he summoned Yuki, the least threatening one. Yuki tackled him to the floor once she saw him and gushed about how happy she was to see him again. When she eventually stopped, he tried to send her back, but Yuki transformed into a small fox and jumped into his hair, saying that she didn't want to return. She promised she'd stay out of sight, so he agreed to let her remain with him as his trusty sidekick. Days later, Seika came upon Gray scolding Yifa in the hallway because she accidentally spilt water on him. But he didn't intervene until he heard Gray telling her to come to his room that night so he could educate her properly. He told Gray to stop thinking with his small head, which pissed him off, so he tried to punch Seika. But Seika caught his fist and stared him down. Not wanting to embarrass himself further, Gray walked away, swearing revenge on Seika. Yifa then thanked Seika for saving her from his degenerate brother, and asked him to come with her because she had something to show him. She took him to the garden where an injured baby monster was and pleaded with him to save it, so he did. Yifa then began praising Seika, but he told her to stop with the glazing and surprised her by pointing out that she was more special than he was because she could see things. She tried denying it, but after he backed up his claims with undeniable proof, she admitted to it and said they were called elementals. She said that they always gathered around magic, but for some reason, they never gathered around Seika. Curious, Seika asked if she could control the elementals, and Yika answered that she'd only done it once. To test out a theory in his mind, Seika created a spirit fireball and instructed Yifa to make it disappear. Once she did this, Seika offered to become her magic tutor, and spent an entire year helping her strengthen her abilities. One faithful day after breakfast, his brothers approached him to invite him to learn sword fighting with them. While they were speaking, a maid rushed up to them and informed them that the monster their father had gone into the city to chase was heading towards the estate. Just then, the monster arrived, scaring Gray, who was the spineless coward, so much that he ran off screaming like a kid. Luft gave orders for all the windows to be shut and for everyone to move deeper into the mansion, but to his surprise, Seika ran outside to save Yifa and another maid. However, before he could reach them, Yifa used fire magic to hurt the monster, saving herself and her friend. Seika then drew the monster's attention to himself, and after allowing it to chase him for a while, he defeated it with a poison oni flame, earning praises from everyone who witnessed what happened. His father also happened to arrive at that time, so during dinner later, he praised Seika for a job well done. Seika then took the opportunity and asked for permission to enroll at the Lodania Magic Academy with Yifa. Blaze consented to Seika enrolling because he was well aware of how much he'd trained, but said Yifa couldn't because she had no magic. Seika told him not to worry and made Yifa do a magical presentation for the family. The fireball spell she cast was a mid-rank spell, so Blaze agreed to let her enroll at the academy with Seika. His decision pissed Gray off beyond measure, as it was against family tradition to allow two brothers to follow the same path. Blaze told him to take a chill pill and said he wasn't breaking tradition because Gray would be enrolling in the army and not the magic academy. This annoyed Gray even more, so he challenged Seika to a duel, saying that the winner would go to the academy. After Seika accepted the challenge, Blaze announced that the duel would be held the next day, and said they weren't allowed to use real swords or high-ranking spells. After dinner, Seika sat in his room making more shikigami when Luft came to speak with him. He gifted Seika a glass pen as a late birthday present, and apologized for all the years he spent treating him like he was John Cena. He said he was happy to see how much Seika had grown, and asked that he go easy on Gray during the duel. After Luft left, Gray blew Seika's window open with a wind spell and demanded that he duel him that night. Seika went with him to the training ground and tried to convince him to wait for the appointed time, but Gray refused, saying their father's rules were stupid. He then attacked first using a high-rank fire spell, but to his surprise, Seika was unhurt and taunted him to do better, so he attacked with wind magic. This spell was blocked by the barrier Seika put up, but Gray continued firing spell after spell, refusing to accept that at that moment, Seika was as untouchable as Gojo. Bored, Seika pulled out a shikigami which represented Gray and used it to curse him to stop moving. He then twisted one of the arms, and as Gray screamed in pain, he assured him that it wasn't broken, and asked him to surrender before things got worse. Gray immediately surrendered, so Seika fixed the shikigami's arm and told him to tell their father in the morning that he was forfeiting the duel. After Gray fainted, Yuki came out of hiding and asked Seika if it was wise to leave Gray alive after showing him a glimpse of his power. Seika reminded her of his promise to Luft, and then recalled what Gray had said earlier about him being blessed by a leprechaun. As far as Gray was concerned, every good thing that happened to Seika was by some stroke of luck, including defeating the Elder Newt monster. What he hadn't known was that Seika had been planning the whole monster incident for 6 months. Once he was sure he was ready, he summoned a Cyclops, Ayakashi, and ordered him to follow his shikigami around the mountain to find the monster and drive it out of his nest. To ensure that no one would notice the Cyclops while he was carrying out his mission, he erected a barrier to cloak him. Days later, Seika and Yifa left for the academy, and during the carriage ride, he gifted Yifa a necklace made of magic stones, which he said would draw more elementals to her. He wanted her to be able to use elemental magic more frequently, and thought that was the best way to help her. Meanwhile, back in his family estate, Blaze was in his study working when his mind suddenly drifted to Seika. He recalled how Seika was dropped off years ago by a mysterious woman who only told him that the child belonged to his brother Gilbert, a free-spirited adventurer who went missing in demon territory. Seika was a rare breed, as it was uncommon for people from that kingdom to have black hair, or even be able to use magic from the age of 1 like he'd done. Curiosity about Seika's true origins had led Blaze to conduct a ceremony to find out his magical affinity, but it was revealed that he was born without magic. On the day Seika showed off his powers, Blaze knew he was on some Jujutsu Kaisen wavelength, but said nothing. He also noticed that Seika had used some sort of poison to defeat the dragon Newt, instead of just fire like he claimed. All these unexplainable things influenced his decision to send Seika and not Gray to the academy because he felt that Seika's environment could influence him to become a hero who protected the nation, or a demon king who destroyed it. Days later, Seika and Yifa arrived at the academy city, and Seika got them rooms at an inn. But Yifa wasn't happy that they were staying in separate rooms. She shyly asked if she should come to his room at night, and the clueless boy said no because he failed to clock the true meaning behind her words. After she left to get them dinner, Yuki came out of hiding and began complaining about how Yifa didn't know her place. Confused, Seika asked why she was hating, and Yuki told him that Yifa was in love with him, but he didn't believe her. The following day, they went to the academy to take the entrance exams, and during registration, they were asked to place their hands above an orb to measure their magic power. Yifa's power level was weak, but she had aptitudes for fire and wind, while Seika didn't have any. This made the other candidates around murmur, saying he was trying to get into the academy using his Nepo baby status. Their words annoyed Yifa, so she lashed out at them, but Seika told her to ignore them. The next moment, a girl named Amyu screamed at everyone to shut up and walked up to the registration booth to have her magic measured. To everyone's surprise, a bright white light showed, indicating that she had aptitude for all 4 elements. As she began walking away, Seika called out to her to thank her for drawing everyone's attention away from him, but she told him she hadn't done it for his sake. She made it very clear that she disliked him, as she couldn't see why someone without magical powers would want to enroll at a magic academy. Seika wasn't offended by her harsh words because he recognized her as the reincarnation of his favorite student from his past life. A little while later, they went in for the written portion of the exam, and when they finished, they all gathered outside for the practical aspect. Cordell, the instructor in charge, explained that all they had to do was aim for the targets, which were enchanted with element-resistant magic, and gain points for themselves. When they began, Seika observed that most of the candidates chose only one element and barely left a dent in the targets. Soon it was Yifa's turn, and she surprised everyone by almost putting a hole in a fire-resistant target with the mid-rank flame spell that Seika taught her. Next, she aimed for a target enchanted with wind resistance and turned it into a replica of Genya's body during his fight with the Upper Moon 4. While everyone was trying to pick their jaws off the floor, Yifa apologized for ruining the targets. But an excited Seika cut her off to compliment her. He asked how she'd perfected her wind magic, and she admitted that she'd been secretly practicing, hoping to surprise him. When it was his turn, the candidates whispered about his lack of magical power, but he shut them up by making his first target look like Azula had attacked it. His second target was broken into pieces by combining earth and metal ki to form pyrite, and his final target was turned into ice. Everyone but Yifa was shocked by what they witnessed, and long after the exam ended, Karen, the female instructor, found Cordell staring at Seika's frozen target. He told her about Seika and Yifa's insane abilities, but said that Amyu was the one who shocked him the most because she fit the description of an overpowered main character to the T. Karen wasn't surprised by this since Amyu was her student, and shared her theory that Amyu was the reincarnation of the hero, which intrigued him. A few days later, the results for the entrance exams were posted, and Seika and Yifa learned that they had passed after ranking 3rd and 2nd, respectively. Amyu was ranked 1st, and when Seika saw her ranking, he told himself that he'd hit the jackpot. A few more days later, they went to that academy for the welcoming ceremony, but on the way to the banquet hall, Yifa noticed some dark elementals nearby. When she told Seika about them, he went to investigate the source, and she followed him. To their surprise, they found a large magic circle drawn on the ground in the bushes. Seika said it was best they leave it alone since they didn't know its origin. However, he secretly left some Shikigamis to watch over the place. Later on during the ceremony, while Amyu was giving a speech as the student representative, Seika sensed the magic circle activate. A few moments later, the door was busted down, and 3 lesser demons walked in, causing the other students to run away in fear. Seika noticed that the demons were searching for something with their eyes, but couldn't figure out what it was. When the teachers began attacking them, he tried to lend them a hand, but Amyu, the demon slayer, intervened. And as he watched her fight the demons, he used his Shikigami to scan the school premises for something unusual. It didn't take long for him to spot the demon controlling the lesser demons using the magic circle, so he went after him. The demon called him a fool for coming alone and then summoned more lesser demons to send him to the afterlife. Seika made quick work of them, slaying 2 and sealing 1 away for future purposes. So, the head demon decided to handle things himself. He easily deflected Seika's attacks and nicked his face with one of his blades before trying to cook him medium rare. Seika jumped out of the way to avoid the flames, but the demon suddenly appeared behind him and tried to stab him. He managed to swap places with the Shikigami before that happened, but he wasn't fast enough as he lost an arm in the process. Still, he stared the demon down and asked what it was that he was looking for, because he'd figured out that he was watching through the eyes of the lesser demons in the hall. Impressed by his deduction skills, the demon happily revealed that he was searching for the hero, prompting Seika to ask if they were in that type of Isekai anime. He didn't want to believe that there was actually a hero, but the demon told him about the prophecy from years ago about a girl with red hair and inhuman strength. This description fit Amyu perfectly, so when Seika unconsciously said her name out loud, the demon thanked him for the tip and began attacking him again. Seika managed to outrun the flying blades, but when he tried to pull a gymnastic move, he was stabbed mid-air, allowing the demon to slice off his head. However, when the demon tried to walk away, he heard Seika chanting and turned around to see him standing there with his arm and head back on. He tried to unalive him again by throwing a dagger at his head, but Seika remained unharmed, and the dagger disappeared. Still, he refused to give up, so Seika retaliated by trying to drown him, but he survived by using teleportation and came for Seika again. This time, the boy summoned a lightning beast, and it hit the demon directly with its lightning. However, he survived and teleported behind Seika, stabbing him through the stomach with his arm, which was a wrong move. Seika grabbed the arm and activated a spell, which exploded after he swapped places with another Shikigami. As the demon tried to recover, Seika explained what he'd done, and the demon immediately called foul, saying it was impossible. Seika replied that it was and advised him to crack open a book sometime instead of showcasing his lack of knowledge. This unwanted lecture pissed the demon off even more, so he powered up and tried to attack, but Seika didn't give him the chance. He began reciting a chant and summoned Kaido, who ate the demon for dinner. When he returned to the banquet hall later on, he was greeted by Yifa, who drew his attention to Amyu, standing on the pile of demon bodies in all her glory. He also noticed that their fellow students were having mixed reactions to the fact that she'd single-handedly slayed the demons and wasn't surprised. He knew what it was like to be in her shoes and felt glad that he wasn't the one in the spotlight this time. However, he resolved to befriend Amyu and help her become even stronger, because it was the only way to hide the fact that he was the main plot. The following day, as Seika and Yifa walked towards the school building, they narrowly escaped getting crushed by a falling large pot. Cordell, who had been the one transporting the pot, came down to retrieve it and apologized to them. Seika then curiously asked what the green liquid inside the pot was, and Cordell explained that it was a catalyst made from a mixture of monster blood, herbs, and ore, which he was using to conduct his research. Later, during the class, Karen informed them that the school's anniversary was the following week. She said that, as per their tradition, the top 2 students had to deliver the new student roster to the temple in the forest as an offering. This made Seika recall the demon, and an uneasy feeling settled in his stomach, so he asked what would happen if one of the 2 candidates refused to go. Karen answered that the student with the 3rd best grades would be asked to replace them, so he instructed Yifa not to go. Everyone was shocked by his abuse of power since they knew Yifa was his slave, and Karen even scolded him, but he didn't care. He said such an important task shouldn't be left in the hands of a slave, and offered to go in place of Yifa. The following week, as Seika and Amyu made the journey to the temple, Amyu asked Seika what he hoped to achieve by coming with her, and he said he just wanted to talk. This prompted her to tease him about wanting to add her to his harem with Yifa, but he clarified that his relationship with Yifa wasn't of that nature. The next moment, she was hit by a sudden headache, and when Seika looked around, he spotted a smaller magic circle. When they approached it, it suddenly activated, teleporting them into a dungeon where they had to fight some low-level monsters. Once all the monsters were dead, Amyu suggested finding the exit, so Seika used his Shikigami to light the way. However, as they walked deeper into the dungeon, he secretly placed some on the ceiling, leaving behind a trail. Curious, Yuki asked if he thought he was Hansel and Greta, so he explained that he was trying to help his Shikigami on the surface locate them and lead them to the exit. Just then, more monsters arrived, so Amyu rushed in to fight them but was punched into a wall. Seika took it upon himself to be her knight in shining armor, and as soon as she passed out, he summoned a large centipede, which went to town on the remaining monsters. Later on, when Amyu woke up, she was hit by another headache, prompting Seika to enclose them in a barrier. Immediately, the pounding in her head stopped, which convinced Seika that the headaches were a result of a curse. Amyu didn't believe she'd been cursed and said she hadn't seen any curse sigils on her body. Seika said it was probably in places she couldn't see, causing her to quickly cross her hand over her chest as though he could see through her clothes. Seika told her to calm her peanuts because he wasn't asking to see her birthday suit, but she surprised him by asking if he could take a quick look. She took off her clothes and turned her back to him so he could check, and once he confirmed that there was nothing there, she put her clothes back on. However, to be on the safe side, he asked for a strand of her hair, which he tied around a Shikigami, explaining that it would act as a substitute and take on the curse. The two then started talking, and Seika learned that Amyu's parents were adventurers, and that she was a fight junkie. There was a time she'd joined some adventurers on a quest in which they lost a few adventurers, but Amyu didn't mind that and excitedly asked when the next adventure was. This earned her cold stares, and from that day forward, those at the guild tagged her to be a fight-crazed weirdo like Inosuke. She said she joined the academy because she hoped that becoming stronger than everyone would make fighting less appealing to her, but so far it had only fueled her addiction. Seika attempted to lighten the mood by making a plot joke and earned himself a knuckle sandwich. Just then, Seika noticed the Shikigami on the roof light up, so he told her it was time they continued their adventure, and she happily agreed. For the next few hours, they fought monsters together like a well-oiled machine until they arrived at the room where the dungeon boss was. Amyu was against the idea of fighting it, but Seika told her not to be a wimp and convinced her to fight the monster with him. They rushed in and, after an eventful battle, finished the monster off with their effective teamwork. They then walked to another room where they found a mithril sword stuck in the arm of a monster. Seika sensed that the arm had lost its power, so he pulled the sword out and gave it to Amyu, since he had no use for it. But he kept the magic ring they found. A little while later, they exited the dungeon, which was underneath the temple, and when they returned to school, they informed their teachers about what had happened. Before heading to his dorm, Seika went to see Cordell, as he had deduced that he was the one who cursed Amyu and sent them to the dungeon. Cordell admitted that he was a spy for the demons whose goal was to get rid of the hero, and even bragged about how perfect his curse was. When he prepared to get rid of Seika for learning his secret, Seika showed him the Shikigami, which had been taken on Amyu's curse, and said he knew how the curse worked. It had been designed to affect anyone who came in contact with demon blood, which was why he had attempted to soak Seika and Yifa in it the other day. Amyu's case was easier since she'd practically bathed in the demon's blood during the demon attack. As Cordell stood staring at him in shock, Seika summoned the demon he'd sealed away and bathed himself in its blood before chanting a spell to transfer Amyu's curse to himself. Next, he chanted another spell and transferred the curse to Cordell, who died almost immediately. The following day, Seika met Yifa and gave her the ring he had found in the dungeon, because he knew it would help amplify her powers. While they were chatting, Amyu walked by, so he tried to talk to her, but she responded coldly, shocking him. She then began talking to Yifa like they were besties, leaving him feeling like an unwanted third wheel. A year later, as the trio who had gotten closer participated in the welcoming ceremony for the new students, the vice principal arrived. He informed Seika and Yifa that they were to report to the principal's office the following day, and they began wondering why. The next day, they went to see the principal as instructed, and Seika was surprised to see that she was a vertically challenged elf. When he expressed his surprise, the woman said he was no different from his Uncle Gilbert, which surprised him again because he didn't think that his father had any siblings. The principal then told them that she'd called for them because she wanted one of them to join a rip-off Mortal Kombat tournament with an underclassman named Mabel. Later on, when they met Amu and told her the reason for their summons to the principal's office, the girl lost it. She demanded to know why she hadn't been considered as a candidate, given the fact that she was a better fighter, and asked how they could consider Yifa over her. Yifa felt hurt after hearing this, so Amu quickly clarified what she meant by her statement by explaining that she knew Yifa was a big softie who couldn't even hurt a fly. She said the tournament wasn't meant for people like her, as most of the contestants wouldn't bat an eye if they unalived a person. Hours later, classes were over, and as the trio walked to their dorms, Amu voiced her opinion on the kind of person she thought Mabel was. She believed she was an over-pampered princess whose daddy wanted her to join the tournament so that it would look good on her future resume. She even predicted that Mabel would drop out of the tournament in the beginning because she wouldn't want to get hurt. As soon as she said this, Mabel spoke up behind them and told Amu to consider a career as a tabloid writer because she was very good at spreading gossip. When they turned to face her, Mabel didn't back down and told Amu that she wasn't chosen because she was weak, and this pissed Amu off. She noticed two boys practicing sword fighting nearby and asked to borrow their swords before challenging Mabel to a duel. When Mabel picked up her sword and took a defensive stance, Seika noted that she was every bit as practiced as Amu was, and wondered what the outcome of the duel would be. Yifa asked if they should intervene, and he told her they didn't have to because he was sure that things wouldn't escalate. However, he didn't mention that his real reason for not intervening was his curiosity to see Mabel's strength. At Amu's request, he gave the signal for the duel to begin, and Amu charged at Mabel, who blocked her attack by infusing magic into her sword. They clashed for a few more minutes until Mabel disarmed Amu, bending her sword in the process. She then turned to leave, telling Amu to go back to leave the fighting for the pros and go back to being the spoiled princess that she was. Before she could walk away, Amu demanded to know why she'd used magic, but Mabel ignored the question. Instead, she told her that the reason she was weak was that she believed she'd get another shot every time she lost. She also advised Seika to forfeit the tournament if he wouldn't take it seriously, and he assured her that he would. After she left, Yifa and Seika went to Amu, who got off the floor and declared that she had made a decision. Much to Seika's frustration, she decided that she would accompany them to the capital for the tournament. When they arrived at the capital, Yifa and Amu suggested going to their inn to rest because Seika looked pretty sick, but he refused. He said he wanted to head to the arena to see the pairings for the matches. Just then, they noticed that Mabel was gone, and Amu commented on how rude it was for her to go off without telling them. She then said they would walk to the arena since carriages weren't allowed to move around the city, and Seika was very glad. A little while later, they were at their destination, and after checking the pairing, Seikia said he was going to crash at the inn. Yifa offered to accompany him, but he declined her offer and suggested that she go sightseeing with Amu. After the girls left, he pulled out his shikigami and went to work placing them around the city. The following day, the tournament kicked off with Seika facing off against a wannabe delinquent who got humbled within the first seconds of the match. After claiming flawless victory, Seika walked back inside, and Yuki asked how many matches he intended to win. He said he wasn't sure yet, so she advised him to be careful, as he was already overexerting himself by using too many shikigami at once. But Seika told her not to worry. He then used the shikigami above the arena to locate where Amu and Yifa were sitting, and went to join them. As the girls congratulated him, the next contestants were called onto the stage, so they shifted their attention there. The contestant who caught their attention the most was a blue-haired boy named Kyle, whose left eye happened to resemble Kaneki's distinctive ghoul eye. When the signal was given for the match to begin, his opponent tried to cast a spell, but Kyle used his enchanted eye to hold him in place and then approached him. Once he was close enough, he plunged his blade into the boy's chest and walked away, leaving him for dead. The entire arena was shocked into silence, but after a few seconds, the people erupted into cheers, but Seika's group was quiet as the girls tried to figure out how the tournament had become a gladiator deathmatch. On the other hand, Seika used his shikigami to observe Kyle and deduced that the boy's eye was what people in his former life called an evil eye. Eventually, the second round of the tournament kicked off, and Seika was once again the opening act. His opponent was a woman who could pass as Hange's crazier twin sister, and she had a golem which she bragged was specialized for anti-magic combat. When the signal was given for the match to begin, the woman ordered her golem to crush Seika, but Seika summoned an Ayakashi to slice it up. The monster moved so quickly that no one saw what happened, and as the woman lay under the rubble of her golem, Seika told her to surrender, and she did. With his second win in the bag, Seika made his way off the stage and told himself that his win had been a close call. When Yuki questioned why that was, he explained that summoning wasn't allowed, and said that if he'd been caught, he would have been disqualified. Shortly after he joined the girls in the audience, Mabel was called on stage, so they turned their attention to the stage to watch her fight. When the match began, Mabel's opponent fired a medium-sized rock at her, but she cut it in half with her sword. Realizing that he was facing off against one of Mihawk's proteges, the guy became afraid and began rapidly firing rocks at her. As expected, she cut them all in half, so he erected stone barriers as he attempted a higher-ranking spell. Mabel simply threw her small knife at the stone blocks, and in the blink of an eye, they all crumbled to pieces. Amyu and Yifa were surprised, but Seika explained that Mabel was manipulating her knives with gravity magic, which made it easier for them to pierce through stone like it was nothing. However, he couldn't figure out how she was able to throw them, seeing as that spell made the knives heavier. As they watched on, they saw her opponent try to give her the slip and attack from the side, but Mabel charged right at him and destroyed his magic staff, so he chose to surrender. The audience began cheering, and Seika heard the commentator refer to Mabel as the hero and became confused. The girls explained that it was because Mabel bore the same name as the last hero and wielded the same weapon she did. Hearing this, he began piecing things together and arrived at a conclusion which intrigued him. In the early hours of the following morning, Seika's Shikigami-turned-eagle intercepted a messenger pigeon. Seika then approached him from the shadows, accusing him of being a demon spy, but the guy denied it and pretended to walk away, only for him to pull out a knife and try to stab Seika, but Seika had anticipated the move, so he used vines to hold him in place. As he struggled against his restraint, Seika asked him to tell him what he'd been trying to report to his employers, but he refused to speak. As a result, Seika summoned a low-budget beast titan, which could read minds, and had it read the guy's mind to find out what he wanted. It turned out that since Cordell and the demon had failed to report back, the demons now believed that the hero they were searching for was Mabel, because she fit the prophecy. After the Ayakashi had milked all the information Seika needed, Seika allowed it to eat the guy because he couldn't afford to let him live. He then took the message from the pigeon and destroyed it before telling Yuki that it was the school that spread the rumor about Mabel being the hero, to prevent the demons from finding Amyu. Even though he was curious about Mabel, he said he didn't mind the lie since it was keeping Amyu safe. Later that day, the tournament continued, and Kyle won his second match easily since his evil eye was no match for his opponent. The second winner of the day was a blonde gigachad named Rizz, who also had an affinity for all four elements, and he told Seika that he was looking forward to fighting him in the finals. When it was Seika's turn, he faced off against a try-hard emo necromancer, whom he schooled in a matter of minutes after their match began. Soon it was Mabel's turn, and after she won her match, she approached Seika and asked him to forfeit his match against her, but he refused. While they were arguing about it, it was announced that Kyle's opponent had forfeited the match, so they would move on to the semifinals between him and Rizz. Seika and Mabel then parted ways, but Mabel still told him that he had to forfeit the match for his own good. When he returned to his seat, the match between Kyle and Rizz was just beginning, and the first thing Rizz did was cast an evil eye-resistant spell on himself. However, that didn't seem to faze Kyle, who began approaching him like a mindless zombie. Rizz tried to slow him down by hitting him with different spells, but Kyle remained unhurt and kept walking towards him because, like Mabel, he was using gravity magic. Rizz then created golems, but when Kyle destroyed all of them with his magic, he changed tactics and charged at him instead. Before he could strike him, Kyle compelled him to stand still and tried to cut him, but the whistle signaling the end of the match went off, and Kyle was declared the winner. That night, as Seika lay in bed, Yuki took on her human form and got into bed with him. When he tried to get her to leave, his Shikigami alerted him that Mabel was about to attack him from the roof, so he tackled Yuki out of bed. When Mabel saw that he was unhurt, she attacked him again, and the two fell out of the window, but that didn't stop her from attacking. The sound of their fighting drew the attention of a drunkard, who yelled at them to keep it down. Seika attempted to knock the guy out, but Mabel beat him to it by throwing a knife above the man's head to scare him, and then disappeared like a ninja. However, Seika found her later in another part of the city and told her that he just wanted to talk when he saw that she pulled out a knife. As they talked, Seika revealed what he knew about her, pretending to be the hero in place of Amyu. Mabel was surprised but said that the real reason she was in the tournament was to get iced by Kyle in the finals, so that the demons would believe that the hero was dead. Additionally, she said that she and Kyle were trained together by the Merchant Association, and the tournament was their way of testing if Kyle had become a perfect mercenary. Before the tournament, they opened a hole in his skull and implanted magic in his brain, which affected his ability to feel any form of emotion, turning him into an obedient murder doll. However, that wasn't all they did. When he first came to them, they put him and all the other kids in their care into groups of 4 and had them do everything together. In the end, only one of them was selected to undergo the procedure, and after that, they were asked to get rid of the other 3 members of their group. Kyle had already done that to 2 of his friends, and Mabel was the last one, so she wanted to fight Kyle and avenge her brother who died at his hands. Sika immediately called Cap and told her that he knew Kyle was her brother, which surprised her. Seeing as she had been caught, Mabel revealed that it was Kyle's wish that she take his life if he ever became someone other than himself. Seika asked if she was sure she could beat Kyle, and she answered that she would try her best to succeed, even though she knew it would end in her death. The next moment, Seika got up and declared that he would be the one to defeat Kyle in the finals. Shocked, Mabel asked if he was on cheap pot, and he answered that he couldn't sit back and watch her die. She argued that she wasn't a helpless damsel who needed saving, but Seika cut her off and said he was sure that the thing Kyle wanted the most was for her to be free. Mabel thanked him for trying to be chivalrous, but said she would bring her A game to the match and ensure that she was the one who made it to the finals. The following day, when Seika and Mabel met in the arena, she attacked first, trying to bring her axe down on Seika, but he jumped out of the way before it hit him. Still, she pursued him, forcing him to use his shikigami to avoid getting cut to pieces, so he stopped being on the defensive and attacked her with rocks. Mabel deflected them with her axe and retaliated by throwing small knives at him, but they were stopped by his barrier. He then used binding vines to hold her up, but she broke free and charged at him with her axe poised to cut. However, she never made it far because Seika increased the weight of the axe by sticking a shikigami on it. Before she could figure out what to do, he created mercury binding vines which she couldn't break free from once they were wrapped around her. As she struggled against the vines, Seika put another shikigami on the axe so he could pick it, but before he could use it, the whistle sounded, and he was declared the winner. Shortly after, it was time for his fight against Kyle, and when the start signal was given, he quickly covered the stage in fog. After trying and failing to take Kyle with his blue flame and mercury binding vines, Seika summoned an Ayakashi, which smacked Kyle to the ground with its club. Seika then approached the unconscious boy, and the next moment, purple veins began appearing all over Kyle's body. To stop it, Seika enclosed them in a barrier, but that did nothing to stop the curse from hurting Kyle, and as he lay there dying, he used his dying breath to leave a message for Mabel. Seika lost his cool when Kyle finally died and, without thinking, began a spell to bring him back to life. But before he could complete it, Yuki convinced him to stop. She pointed out that if he finished the spell, he would draw unwanted attention to himself, reminding him of the reason he had to be reincarnated in the first place. In the end, he made everyone believe that he had burned Kyle to ashes, so he was declared the winner of the tournament. Later on, he helped Mabel bury Kyle's body, and as they stood staring at the grave, he told her that Kyle wanted her to know he was sorry about the 4-leaf clover. Mabel broke down into tears and explained to Seika that shortly before Kyle underwent the procedure, they had quarreled because he had broken her favorite 4-leaf clover hairpin. After she finished crying, she asked what would become of her now that she had failed her mission, and Seika told her that she would return to school and continue living her life. Mabel didn't see how that was possible, but he assured her that there was nothing to worry about and promised to handle everything. They then joined Amu and Yifa, who were waiting for them, and since Seika had filled them in on what had happened, excluding the part where Mabel was pretending to be the hero in Amu's place, Amu requested a rematch of their duel. This time, Amu ensured that she won by using magic and then told Mabel that she knew the real reason she wanted to win against Kyle was to prove that she was better than him. Mabel asked what that had to do with anything, and Amu answered that she could switch her focus to trying to best her since they were evenly matched. So Mabel accepted the offer, even though she claimed it was stupid. Days later, after they returned to the academy, Seika visited the principal and told her that he had saved the life of her fake hero. It turned out that the reason she sent him to the tournament was that she was hoping he would save Mabel. The woman didn't deny it and told him that she wanted him to look after Mabel because she needed all the help she could get. Weeks later, as the 4 of them were having breakfast, Seika informed the girls that his father had asked him to go to the kingdom of Asteria to investigate a dragon. They were still talking about it when a boy and an elf walked into the cafeteria, drawing everyone's attention to themselves. When the boy spotted Seika, he excitedly approached him and introduced himself as Cecilio, the crown prince of Asteria. He was in the middle of saying something else when he noticed Yifa and became mesmerized. He asked what her name was, and when she told him, he got down on one knee and asked her to join his country's harem and marry him. His words shocked everyone, and Yifa turned him down, saying she was Seika's slave. Cecilio didn't see this as a problem and asked Seika to name his price, as he was willing to buy Yifa from him. Before Seika could respond, Lace, the elf, suggested they go somewhere more private to discuss. A little while later, the four of them were in a private room, and Cecilio told Seika about his kingdom's dragon problem. He said that the dragon had lived in harmony with the people for centuries and had even helped them drive off invaders in the past. However, for over a year, it had been behaving strangely, attacking crops and cattle and making the people uncomfortable. Curious, Seika asked what the reason behind their coexistence with the dragon was. So Cecilio explained that according to legend, the dragon was hatched from an egg by an Asteria queen. He said he couldn't verify if the legend was true or not, and asked that Seika investigate it as well, so Seika agreed. Cecilio then refocused his attention on Yifa and invited her to have dinner with him, but Rizz told him to slow his roll and stop acting like a desperate simp, so he backed off. 2 days later, Seika and Yifa left for Asteria with Cecilio and his escorts, and when they arrived, they spotted the dragon flying above the city. Suddenly, it swooped down and tried to attack them, but someone summoned a lava tiger which chased it away. As the dragon flew off, the tiger turned its attention to Yifa, so Seika trapped it using some crystals. When the crystals began to melt because of the tiger's body heat, he charged at it, drawing its attention to him. Before either of them could attack the other, a chain suddenly appeared around the tiger's neck and forced it to stop. Zect, the summoner who was controlling it, then approached the group and returned the tiger to his spellbook. Cecilio scolded Zect for being reckless and almost hurting his guests, but Zect defended his actions, saying that it was the only way to stop the dragon from attacking. Curious, Seika asked who Zect was, and Cecilio introduced him as the head of the mercenary group he hired. When he introduced Seika to Zect, the guy recognized him as the one who caused Kyle's death, and spoke to him in a very sarcastic manner. Seika didn't try to hide his dislike for Zect either, and asked Cecilio why he hired mercenaries, to which he answered that he wanted them to slay the dragon. He said it was the only way to bring peace back to the kingdom, but Seika disagreed and asked him to reconsider his decision. Just then, Zect inserted himself into the conversation and started arguing with Seika, but Cecilio intervened. After Zect left with his crew, Yifa walked up to them and thanked Seika for protecting her from the tiger, but he responded by scolding her harshly for not using her magic to defend herself. When Cecilio tried to intervene, he cut him off, saying the matter was between him and Yifa. Returning his attention to Yifa, Seika told her that in the face of danger, she had to be proactive, because he wouldn't always be there to save her. The next day, Seika and Yifa went to the library in the castle to do some research, and they learned the dragon's history. It turned out that several years after the dragon began living with the people, a female dragon came to Asteria. The friendly neighborhood dragon, who was male, became booed up with the female dragon and moved to the mountains to live with it. 50 years later, the behavior of the dragons changed and they began attacking everything and everyone because they had given birth to children. Eventually, the children left the nest when they grew older. And then 50 years after they left, the female dragon died of natural causes. After reading this fascinating history, Seika declared that he would go up the mountain alone to carry out his investigation. That night, Yifa went to Seika's room to ask for advice on what to do, because Cecilio had sent for her. Seika told her that she didn't have to go if she didn't want to, but he noticed that she still wasn't feeling relaxed, so he invited her to spend the night in his room. As they lay in bed, Seika told Yifa that if she was thinking of joining Cecilio's harem, he wouldn't stop her. Believing he was tired of having her around, Yifa apologized for the previous day's incident with the tiger, and promised to learn how to use her magic in desperate times, just as long as she got to remain by his side. Realizing that she had taken his words out of context, Seika cut her off and explained his reason for saying what he said, so Yifa reluctantly promised to think about the offer again. The next morning, Seika went to see Cecilio and politely chewed him out for sending for Yifa in the middle of the night like she were some call girl. Cecilio defended his actions, saying he had just wanted to talk to her, but Seika warned him to stay away from her. He then informed the prince that he was going up the mountain, and the prince immediately started scheming, as he knew it would be a few days before Seika returned. Later on, after Yifa bid farewell to Seika, she ran into Rizz in the hallway, and the elf took her to a terrace to speak with her. As they talked, Rizz told Yifa that she could see elementals because she was an elf descendant. She then tried to convince Yifa to join Celio's harem, but the girl refused, so she told her that Seika was a monster. She said the elementals avoided Seika the same way they avoided a demon's miasma, implying that Seika wasn't human. Yifa argued that Seika was human, using the fact that they grew up together as proof, but Rizz told her that all that didn't matter. Meanwhile, Seika arrived at the dragon's nest, and when the glorified lizard saw him, it tried to burn him with its breath, but he protected himself with a barrier. Seeing this, the creature tried a direct attack, but Seika used his Shikigami to teleport out of the way before summoning an Ayakashi. This Ayakashi weighed a ton and forced the dragon down to the ground, allowing Seika to trap it with a net. He then went into the dragon's nest and was surprised to see an egg, so Yuki asked how that was possible since the dragon was male. Seika explained that over the years the dragon had changed from male to female, and added that it wasn't uncommon for some creatures to be able to reproduce without a partner. After examining the egg for a few minutes, Seika rolled it over and told Yuki that he was starting to see the truth in the legend about the queen hatching the dragon from an egg. Just then, they noticed the dragon giving them a strange look and returned its stare, wondering what it wanted. Back at the castle, Rizz took Yifa on a tour of the harem palace, in the hopes that it would convince her to join. The harem girls spent most of their days learning about politics and the state of the kingdom, because when the time came, they would be involved in the nation's political scene. They also learned other valuable skills which would help them excel in the future, and Rizz told Yifa that most of the queens who had ruled in the past came from the harem. As they drew close to the end of the tour, Rizz began hyping Cecilio up to Yifa, and asked that Yifa reconsider her decision because Cecilio's feelings for her were genuine. Rizz then took Yifa back to the terrace where Cecilio was waiting with 2 men and 2 guards. She soon discovered that she'd been brought there to sign a document which Cecilio had prepared to buy her from Seika, and Yifa refused to do it. Cecilio then ordered his guards to seize Yifa and force her to thumbprint on the document, so Yifa tried to fight them using magic. However, Rizz intervened, erecting a barrier to prevent her from using her magic. She apologized for doing things that way, but said it was the best thing for her, and then cut her thumb before trying to force her to thumbprint on the document. The next moment, the dragon showed up and broke Liza's barrier, shocking everyone. But the most shocking part was the fact that Seika was on its back. Oblivious to what was happening, Seika explained the reason for his return with the dragon, and asked Yifa to accompany him to the nest to continue looking after the legend. Yifa went with him happily. As they flew through the sky, Yifa thanked Seika, but the boy didn't understand what she was thanking him for, and she didn't try to explain. Soon after they arrived at the nest, Zekt showed up and set his lava tiger on them, but Seika trapped the tiger again with earth crystals. As it struggled to break free, Seika accused Zekt of trying to steal the egg from the start, and Zekt admitted that he had fed the prince lies about the dragon so no one would suspect a thing. Just then, the tiger broke free and charged at Seika and Yifa, but before it could get to them, Yifa sent it flying with a powerful water spell. However, it got back up and charged at them again with Zekt's men, so Seika destroyed it using a powerful spell. This action made everyone stop in their tracks, but Zekt screamed at them to keep going. Before they could carry out his orders, the dragon stepped forward, and the cowards scattered like ants, scrambling to get away. Seika then used binding vines to capture them, while Yifa set Zekt's spellbook on fire to prevent him from summoning any more monsters. As the mercenary mourned the loss of his book, Seika commended Yifa for having improved her magic, which made her happy. Later on, Zekt and his men were reported to Cecilio, and the prince ordered that they be locked up after Seika told him about Zekt's scheme. Seika then told Cecilio everything he learned about the dragon, and said that they just had to help it look after its egg and everything would be back to normal. Despite hearing this report, Cecilio still wanted the dragon gone and asked Seika to help him slay it. He said it was the only way to prove that he was fit to be the crown prince, and pleaded with Seika to see things his way, but Seika refused. Following his refusal, Cecilio ordered that Seika be arrested on suspicion of using magic to cause the dragon to go crazy, and Seika didn't try to oppose him. However, when Cecilio started trying to convince Yifa to come to him, Seika lost it and lashed out at the prince. He said he was worse than a spineless coward for trying to use the issue to fulfill his selfish desires, and told him to be ashamed of himself. He also defiantly declared that he would never give Yifa to a useless scoundrel like Cecilio. And the next moment, Lita started laughing. She ordered the guards to put their swords away and asked Yifa what her opinion was on the matter. As expected, the girl chose to side with Seika and politely turned down the prince's offer. Cecilio still tried to convince her to go with him, but Rizz told him to accept that he lacked Rizz and had failed to bag a powerful baddie. She then thanked Seika for solving the issue with the dragon, and asked that he forgive and forget what the prince had done. After he agreed, she took Yifa out to the hallway and gifted her a few of her elementals, as she wished her well in her future endeavors. Meanwhile, a group of demons were fighting some monsters in a forest somewhere, and after they won, they turned their attention to the human who was there. It turned out that they had massacred his entire village and left him alive in exchange for information, but the boy had summoned monsters to fight them instead. The last monster standing was a Cyclops, and the leader of the demon squad easily got rid of him before giving his people permission to eat the guy. While they did that, he swore to himself that he would fulfill his mission and defeat the hero even if it cost him his life. Sometime later, after school resumed, Seika was walking with the girls when he suddenly told Amyu that he wanted her to meet his family, shocking all 3 girls. They assumed he was trying to make a marriage proposal, but he told them to calm their plots and explained that his father wanted to meet the swordswoman who could use all 4 elements like the Avatar. After Amyu agreed to go, Seika extended an invitation to Mabel as well, and the girl said she'd love to come. Days later, Sika and the girls arrived at his family estate and were welcomed by Luft and Edis, Yifa's father. While he was introducing Amu and Mabel to them, Gray suddenly showed up and challenged Sika to a fight to reclaim his honor. When Amu learned who he was, she volunteered to fight Gray in place of Sika, and Sika promised Gray that if he won, he would fight him. Gray accepted the terms and even told Amu that she could use her real sword instead of the wooden practice one, which surprised her. She pointed out that doing so would give her an unfair advantage over him, but Gray said a wooden sword was all he needed to beat an amateur like her. He then asked Sika to be the referee, so Sika told them that they weren't allowed to use magic, and gave the signal for the fight to begin. Amu charged at Gray, but he blocked her attack and parried her subsequent attacks until he missed his step. Amu attempted to use this opportunity to win the fight, but Gary suddenly pulled out his wand and started chanting. This startled her, giving him the chance to disarm her and win the fight, but Amu refused to accept that he won and complained that he'd cheated. Gray told her that it wasn't cheating because on the battlefield, a person was allowed to use any means necessary to win. She asked for a rematch, but he refused and approached Sika, asking him to keep his end of their deal and fight him. Just as Sika agreed, Gray's employer, Fiona the Holy Princess, joined their group and said it was an honor for her to witness her holy knight fighting. Gray asked where the men he'd assigned to her were, and she admitted that she'd ditched them to come find him. She then asked them to begin the fight, but cryptically said something about Gray losing, so he told Sika to forget about the duel. Following his withdrawal from the duel, Gray introduced Fiona to the group, and they were all left speechless as they had never thought they would get the chance to meet a royal in their lifetime. As they walked inside the house, Yuki asked Sika why Fiona was called the Holy Princess, and he told her it was because her mother was a priestess. A little while later, the group, excluding Edis, sat in a small living room, and Fiona admitted that she had always wanted to meet Amu because she'd heard so much about her. After talking to Amu for a bit, Fiona thanked Sika for granting her wish and said she would have loved it if he could become one of her holy knights. Since that would never happen, she asked him to accompany her when it was time for her to return to the capital, and Sika agreed. During dinner later, Sika answered all of Fiona's questions, engaging her in conversation so that things wouldn't be awkward. As things became lively around the dinner table, Blaze watched Sika and recalled his conversation with Edis earlier that day. It turned out that Edis didn't like Sika, as he believed him to be the spawn of the devil, and hated the fact that Blaze made his daughter Sika's servant. Blaze tried to convince Edis to see the good in Sika, but the man chose to stick with his beliefs. Back in the present, Sika noticed Blaze watching him and asked if there was a problem, to which Blaze responded by thanking him for handling the dragon issue. He said Sika's well-detailed report on the incident was a major topic of discussion among certain academics, and Sika told him it was the result of the things he learned at school. Curious, Blaze asked if the academy was still as good as he'd heard, and when Sika confirmed it, he said he was glad. Just then, his wife spoke up and told Sika to write home more often, and the boy became shocked, as it was the first time in his life that she'd acknowledged him. The following day, Sika accompanied Fiona around town along with Amu and Gray, who told him to be on alert since they had left the remaining knights at home. Fiona was as excited as a kid at an amusement park, so she grabbed Sika's hand and pulled him everywhere. As they walked around, they came across a structure that was being built, and Fiona pulled Sika along to get a closer look at it. Just as Gray was telling them to be careful, the rope holding some wooden planks cut, and the planks began falling. Immediately, Gray and Amu cast spells to protect Sika and Fiona, drawing everyone's attention to them, so Gray said it was time they went home. Hours later, Sika found Gray training outside, so he approached him, and as they talked, Gray revealed that Fiona could see the future. This was because her mother was the Oracle Priestess, and on the day Fiona was born, the woman spoke the prophecy of the hero and the Demon King. Sika asked if the Empire already knew the identities of the hero and the Demon King, and he said no. However, he suspected that Amu was the hero because of how desperate Fiona had been to see her. Sika asked why he was telling him all those things, and Gray said it was because Fiona had been desperate to see him as well. He warned Sika not to get too involved with whatever Fiona planned to do, because everything she did was for the future of the Empire. The next day, Sika expertly avoided Fiona with the help of his Shikigami, and while he was hiding in the garden, he saw Amu. He asked where she was headed, and she told him that she'd just finished sword training with Gray and had lost each match. Sika was surprised and wondered why the hero couldn't win against his brother. When he didn't say anything, Amu asked what he was up to, and he admitted that he was hiding from Fiona, who was acting worse than a clingy girlfriend. Amu told him to stop winning and be grateful that a girl like Fiona had a crush on an ugly loser like him. She then advised him to go spend time with Fiona, saying that she saw her playing chess alone on the terrace, and the entire scene was screaming lonely. This made Sika feel bad, so he went to see Fiona, and she invited him to play a game with her, even though he said he was bad at chess. While they played, Fiona proposed a bet to make things more fun. and said that the loser had to do everything the winner said, no matter what. Seika pointed out how risky that was, so Fiona called him a wimp and changed the rules, saying that the loser was allowed to refuse if the winner's request was beyond their capabilities. As they continued playing, Fiona asked Seika which chess piece he thought was the strongest, and he answered that it was the player's. According to him, those who moved the pieces had all the power because they couldn't be taken out, and Fiona commended him for such a brilliant answer. However, she disagreed with him and said the strongest pieces were the ones standing outside watching the game. Seika pointed out that even though, according to nature, the people ought to be the ones with more power, they were significantly powerless and were always exploited by their leaders in most cases. Fiona argued that it was because kings and politicians were greedy thieves who spent more time taking from the masses than they did providing for them. Their method of theft was the ridiculous taxes they imposed on the masses, and she didn't like that. Seika then asked if the reason she was going out of her way to ensure that people knew her name was because she knew that she could climb to the top with their help. Fiona confirmed that he was right and then told him that she was going to win their game. Seika wasn't surprised, but he asked if she'd seen it with her future sight, and Fiona said yes, asking if Gray had told him about her ability. Seika admitted that before then, he'd had a hunch when she said what she said about Gray losing the duel against him, and when she insisted that they go inspect the building being built. Intrigued, Fiona said she was glad that Gray had told him about her ability because she hadn't known how to tell him about it herself. As they discussed further, she told him that even though she saw the future, it wasn't always set in stone because things could be changed, so she didn't always rely on her visions. Shortly after that, Seika forfeited the game because Fiona told him that he'd lose in 7 moves, so she asked if it was unfair that she used her ability. Seika said he didn't mind, but she felt she had to win his trust and decided to tell him what was on her mind. She said that there was someone she wished to save, and when Seika asked who that was, she refused to tell him, so he told her to count on him if she needed any help. Fiona thanked him, and before she left, she promised to think about what she wanted him to do since he lost the bet. Meanwhile, the demon squad had attacked a group of bandits in the forest, and while they lounged around eating, their leader observed them. He noted that each one had grown stronger since the start of their mission, and hoped that the strength they gained would help them when the time came. Days later, Seika and the girls left his family estate with Fiona's entourage, and Fiona made him ride in the same carriage with her. Hours after they left, they were attacked, so Seika exited the carriage to see what was going on. It turned out that they were under attack from bandits who wanted to kidnap the princess. However, they didn't know which carriage she was in, which was why they started attacking randomly. When their leader spotted Seika standing on top of one of the carriages, he ordered his archers to shoot him down, but Seika summoned storm clouds, which deflected the arrows. They tried to retaliate with magic, but Seika blocked the attack with his barrier just as Gray emerged from the carriage and ordered his men to do their damn jobs. Fiona also came out and asked Seika to capture the bandits alive, so he used his binding vines to grant her request. As the soldiers rounded the bandits up, the girls approached Seika to ask what had happened, because their carriage had been far behind when the attack occurred. Seika explained the situation to them, and Yifa commented on how ballsy the bandits were to attack carriages being escorted by soldiers. This statement got the cogs inside Seika's head turning, and as he tried to put the pieces together, Gray came to inform him that Fiona wanted to speak with him. Inside the carriage, she thanked him for capturing the bandits but used the word assassins to refer to them, making it clear that they had been sent by a political opponent. Seika asked if the reason she brought extra carriages was because she'd seen that the attack would happen, and she said yes. He then told her that it was risky trying to bring the men back, but she assured him that everything was fine, as the backup they were expecting had encountered some problems. Of course, he didn't know that she was referring to the bandits who had been slaughtered by the demons. Later on, when they arrived at the city, Fiona bid farewell to Seika and the girls. But before leaving, she told Seika that she was on his side and asked him not to forget that, no matter what happened. Days later, the principal invited Seika to her office and told him to give a speech as the student representative during the welcoming ceremony for the new students. On his way back to class, Yuki asked why he hadn't turned down the offer, and he said it was because he wanted to try and be like a normal person. This prompted her to ask if he would still act like a normal person when the unwanted guests arrived, and he answered that he'd find a way to deal with them without anyone finding out. A little while later, the demon squad arrived outside the academy and were glad to see that there were no guards or adventurers posted outside. However, their leader couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. Despite this feeling, he hyped his party members up and gave them a rundown of how they were supposed to go about finding the hero. Shortly after, they teleported into the school premises and were greeted by a thick veil of fog, which they didn't think anything of. The first demon spotted 2 students walking towards him, so he immediately attacked them with a powerful fire spell, but when he went to check on them, he saw something that surprised him. In another part of the academy, the rabbit demon and the floating demon girl noticed someone running into some bushes, so the rabbit sent his demon wolves after the person. When the wolves returned, he noticed that one of them had something in his mouth. Elsewhere, the ogre demon was attacked by Mabel, who assumed he had been sent by the Merchants Association to assassinate her, and he happily engaged her in combat because he sensed how strong she was. As they fought, Mabel avoided getting hit by his club, and when she moved onto a fence, the ogre blocked her attack with his club before sending her flying. Using her cat-like abilities, Mabel landed on her feet and retaliated by throwing her knives. The ogre used his arm to defend himself, not minding that the knives got stuck since he hardly felt any pain from it. The next moment, he found himself bound by Mabel's magic, but he used his Hulk-like strength to break free and explained that he was resistant to all magical elements. Mabel then tried to attack him, again, but he deflected her knives and charged at her with his club. However, Seika teleported her out before she got flattened like a pancake. At the same time, the captain realized that something was strange because he hadn't seen a single soul since he entered the premises. Soon, the other 4 demons joined him and explained that the paths they took led them there and not where they had agreed to meet. They also reported that everyone they encountered was weird and turned into strange talisman when they attacked them. Realizing that they had walked into a trap, the leader ordered a retreat, but before they could do so, they heard Seika chanting. Turning around, they saw him sitting on a floating magic circle and told them that everyone they encountered except Mabel was fake. The leader, who could read people's strengths, did this for Seika and instantly froze in his tracks. The ogre told Seika that he could sense that he was strong and tried to challenge him to a duel, but before he could complete his statement, his head was mysteriously severed. It turned out that Seika had linked him to a Shikigami, and when he cut off the Shikigami's head, the ogre's head followed suit. The demon girl tried to avenge her friend by using the power of her evil third eye, but Seika wasn't bothered and summoned a large white snake to deal with her. When she turned her gaze to it, she suddenly had a heart attack and fell to the ground dead. Seika explained that the snake's gaze was powerful enough to stop a person's heart, but the demons pointed out that the snake's eyes were sewn shut. Seika answered that some snakes had a third eye and said that this one used infrared rays near its nose to see. Just then, a demon parasite came up from the ground beside the snake and tried to attack it, but the snake did the same thing it did to the demon girl to it. As it fell, the demon rabbit attempted to tame the snake since he was a beast tamer, but he failed, and the snake swallowed him whole. Seeing what happened to their friends, the leader told the last demon to run away so he could live to warn the demons of the terror that was Seika. Curious, the demon asked what Seika was, and the leader answered fearfully that he was the demon king. Seika then told them that he wouldn't allow them to hurt Amu because he was the one responsible for protecting her. Hearing this, the demon leader said that something had gone wrong with the demon king's reincarnation because he had now joined forces with the humans instead of the demons. He then repeated his instructions to the other demon, but the demon refused to leave without him as he was sure they could both survive. The leader told him not to be stupid and promised to buy him time to escape so that the sacrifices of their friends wouldn't be in vain. He then cast a spell to counter the larva spell that Seika cast, but his spell was too weak against the larva, and he met his end. The last demon managed to teleport out of the place in time, but as he rested against a tree trying to catch his breath, he suddenly noticed a large gash opening in his chest. The wound had been inflicted on him by Seika through a Shikigami because he couldn't afford to let him live. Yuki admitted that Seika's power had grown because of what she witnessed, but he assured her that she had nothing to worry about. Just then, Mabel ran up to Seika and asked where the ogre was, saying she had to find and stop him before he hurt someone. Seika asked her to calm down and revealed that the ogre hadn't been after her but Amu, so she asked if he had taken care of it. He told her that he had, but instructed her to keep it a secret from the others. Days later, during the welcoming banquet, some soldiers stormed in looking for Amu, so she presented herself to them. When she asked what they needed her for, they told her that she was under arrest for slaying the demon emissary who visited the academy days ago. Amu denied doing that, but she was still taken into custody, and when Yifa and Mabel tried to stop them, Seika told them not to. He then assured Amu that she would be released soon because she was innocent. After Amu was taken away, Seika went to see the principal, and she assured him that she was already pulling some strings to get Amu free. After he left her office, he met Yifa and Mabel waiting outside, and when they asked how his discussion had gone, he told them that the principal promised to handle the situation. The girls were a bit skeptical and asked if Seika would truly wait for the principal to handle things, and he said yes. However, that night, he summoned his dragon Ayakashi, which took him to the capital to save Amu. Yuki tried to convince him not to go full Punisher mode on the people who took Amu, but Seika was beyond the point of reasoning and refused to listen. A little while later, he arrived at the capital and used his Shikigami to locate where Amu was being kept. When he landed in the castle, the soldiers took him for an intruder and started firing arrows at him. Uninterested in them, he surrounded himself with the clouds, which repelled the arrows, and took the archer towers with an earth spell. As he continued on his way, he was ambushed by more soldiers, so he told them to get out of his way if they wanted to live. Of course, they ignored his warning and attacked him with flaming arrows, so he set most of them on fire and unleashed the slasher Ayakashi on the others. Those who attempted to run met their end at Sika's hands when he went full firebender on them. When he was done, he went to Amyu's cell and told her that he'd come to take her back to school, but she refused to go with him. She scolded him for attempting a prison break and told him to return to school, as the misunderstanding would be cleared up soon. Seeing that Amyu wouldn't listen, Seika revealed that she would never be set free, because she was the hero and everyone wanted her dead. Just then, Seika sensed someone approaching and tried to attack them with a fire spell, but the person countered the spell. That was when he realized that it was Gray, so he welcomed his brother and joked, asking if he'd come to challenge him to another duel. Gray didn't laugh or respond to the joke as he wasn't in the mood, but he did ask Seika what he thought he was doing. Before Seika could respond, Fiona arrived, so he asked her to explain why Amyu was locked up when she'd done nothing wrong. In response, Fiona told about how the Empire was once a small nation, which forcefully conscripted its people to fight the demons, until the hero suddenly showed up. She single-handedly turned the tide by slaying the Demon King, thus ending the war and becoming a beacon of hope. However, times had changed, so the hero and Demon King were seen as relics of the past. Seika then asked why they couldn't just ignore Amyu since they had no use for her, and Fiona answered that it was because her mere existence could incite a war. She said that both sides didn't want to go to war, which was why the demons had been sending assassins after Amyu since they learned where she was. As they tried to digest what she said, Fiona revealed that Amyu would never gain the full powers of the former hero because Seika was around. She explained that the powers were obtained after the hero overcame hardships, but since Seika was making sure that Amyu never lifted a finger or got hurt, that would never happen. She then tried to cash in the bet he owed her and told him to return to school, promising that she would do everything to keep Amyu alive, but Seika refused. Seeing this, Fiona ordered Gray to go call off the soldiers stationed outside and then took Amyu and Seika out the back to the carriage she'd prepared in advance. She told them to go to the free city of Rachna and said the carriage had all the supplies they would need and told Amyu that her sword was also there, so they thanked her. Amyu tried to return the blanket she'd given her earlier, but Fiona refused to take it, saying that the night would only get colder. Seeing the confusion on Seika's face, Amyu explained that Fiona and Gray had visited her in the cell and encouraged her to be strong. This made Seika feel bad about the way he spoke to them earlier, so he apologized for not keeping his promise to trust Fiona and do what she asked of him. To make it up to her, he turned and resurrected the soldiers he'd brutally slaughtered, but instead of thanking him, Fiona complained. She said she'd intended to tell everyone that a powerful demon had attacked them and laid siege to the castle, but now she couldn't do that anymore because he'd brought everyone back to life. After she calmed down, she told them to be on their way, so they said their goodbyes and went to the carriage. However, they didn't leave immediately. Seika was lost in thought, and Amyu tried to make sense of everything that had happened and had been said. Eventually, she turned to Seika and told him that they had to leave, but he surprised her by asking if she knew how to drive a carriage. Meanwhile, Fiona was standing on a terrace overlooking the kingdom when something in her shadow asked who Seika was. The princess answered that he was the Demon King, so the Shadow Demon questioned why the Demon King would be protecting the hero. Fiona said it was because Amyu was someone close to him and said that Seika was the type of person who would use his powers to help those in need. Somewhere on the road, as Amyu drove herself and Seika to the free city of Rachna, Seika wondered out loud how Mabel and Yifa were doing. Amyu assured him that the girls were fine and said she was sure they would see them again someday. Later on, Fiona sent a letter to Mabel and Yifa, telling them where to find Seika and Amyu, so they went there and reunited with their friends. Do you think Seika and the girls can live a normal life as fugitives, or would they always have to watch their backs? That's all for today's video, but if you enjoyed it, let us know by commenting Isekai. Also, check out this next video. See you next time.